In New York, we had a number of irregularities. Well, first of all, New York's irregular in the first place. They have a closed primary that is draconian if you have not registered as a Democrat 6 months before the election. Goner, can't do it. Now, if you're a new voter, you could do it. That also has a firm cutoff date way before the election. But if you were at a different party, registered to a different party, well, sad day for you. You had to have known that and changed it 6 months ago. But that is not the issue here. That's an issue New York should fix overall. That disenfranchises a lot of people in primaries. Maybe that's the point of it. But it shouldn't be. That's not how democracy should work. And if you're a Democrat, you should be for more people voting. Okay. Now, the problems that happened on Election Day were voter purges. So there was 120,000 people purged in Brooklyn alone. And some people said that their party affiliation was changed from Democrats. So they were Democrats and changed to another party so they weren't allowed to vote. Now, some of that was proven out because of Sandy Hook. Some of the registrations had been changed because they made an exception that year that you could vote in a district that wasn't yours if you were caught because of that disaster somewhere else in New York. But what they didn't tell you is that they said because you voted in that way, you're no longer in the Democratic Party. Okay, that is absolutely bizarre. Now, those are some of the issues, but this requires an investigation into more issues to see what exactly happened here, because there has been over 1,000 complaints in this race alone, in this New York primary alone, and that, of course, was brought up to New York officials, and they decided they were going to take action. Okay, good news. Scott M. Stringer wrote a letter yesterday to Michael Ryan, the executive director of the New York City Board of Elections, informing him of the audit. Wow, we got an audit. Good. The letter cited reports of voters purged from voting lists, closed polling stations, and broken machines, among other issues. So, on top of the voting list issues, and that there are a number of those, then you've got the closed polling stations and the broken machines, etc. Well, Scott Stringer is going to look into it. In fact, Stringer expressed deep concern over widespread reports of poll site problems and irregularities in the letter. New York State Attorney General Eric T. Schneiderman also said Wednesday he was opening an investigation into the board. This is great, man. And Mayor de Blasio also said that he was concerned about these issues. Oh, interesting note here that you might have been able to tell from the graphics already. BuzzFeed also explains the New York City Comptroller, Scott Stringer, who is auditing the local board of elections after reports of voting issues in Tuesday's primary election, is also a Democratic delegate for Hillary Clinton. Don't worry, though. Stringer says, quote, our audits are above politics. Oh, I see. So I'm always amused when people in Washington say, let's not play politics with this. You guys are all politicians. That's your job. Of course you're going to play politics with it. They usually say that if they want to avoid blame. Like, this is not time to figure point. We shouldn't play politics with this issue. If it was to their advantage, they immediately would play politics with that issue. So here we have an elected official saying, let's not play politics. And it's okay, we're above politics. Maybe yes, maybe no. Now, he says if it becomes an issue that the fact that he's a delegate for Hillary Clinton is a conflict of interest, then he'll recuse himself and he'll have someone else head the investigation. Look, I say this with some obvious skepticism, right? And that's because I'm in the media and my job is to be skeptical of the government, especially politicians saying that they're above politics. Now, that doesn't mean that Scott Stringer is a bad guy. It doesn't mean that he's going to conduct a crooked investigation. You shouldn't jump to conclusions. At this point, there's no reason to believe that. There is reason to believe that there is a conflict of interest. Today, Bernie Sanders talking about convenient that the place I was born is the place they had the most voters purged. And if it was just this case, and actually a lot of the Sanders supporters have yelled at me online before for not more aggressively covering some of the other voter issues in other states. Look, I think Arizona had a real problem. They closed down so many polling stations, 70% of their polling stations, and I think that was outrageous. But in almost every election, there are some issues, and they get sorted out, and most of the time it is not nefarious, and it turns out it's usually incompetence or a small error there that doesn't really affect the election. In this case, since she won by 15 points, it's also unlikely to affect the election. But the number of people affected is significant. And now within the context of not just Arizona, but today you see in the news that Rhode Island is closing 2/3 of their polling stations. Why? That's bizarre. And then there's a story out today in California about 500,000 voters purged from the rolls there. A lot of them are Democrats. Well, now again, California is mainly Democratic. But when you look at it in that context, and by the way, we also know that 33 states have already helped the Hillary Victory Fund funnel money from her donors back to her campaigns and super PACs. Well, now, we know the state Democratic parties, 33 of them are in the tank for Hillary Clinton. And then you've got a situation where states all over the country are all of a sudden purging voter rolls. Well, look, I'm not saying people are crooked. What I'm saying is, can you not see that people would be concerned about a conflict of interest? So I think that concern is very legitimate. We'll have to see how they conduct the investigation, how long the investigation takes. For example, one appearance of conflict would be if they're like, oh, this is a very important issue. We should really take our time to do this investigation right. And so we'll get back to you after November. Or, in this case, since it's a primary, we'll get back to you in August after all the primary voting is done and we already know who the candidate's going to be. Well, those would be deeply problematic. So this investigation should be done immediately, as quickly as possible, and you would have hoped by someone who's not biased in either direction. And now, it could turn out that Stringer is a man of his word and he conducts a thorough and quick investigation and comes up with real answers. The problem is that once he releases his answers, it's hard to know what's powered by the Democratic Party machine, which is almost exclusively on the side of Hillary Clinton, and what's the truth.